Okay, well, we're doing quotes from this book right here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers, in alphabetical order. We're on Archibald MacLeish. He was a Scottish-American writer, and he says the most important thing about a library, the most important thing in a library is that it exists. Okay, so just the fact, libraries are a good thing. It's good to have hard copy books because anything on the internet could be deleted. An entire YouTube channel could be deleted like that. So to preserve knowledge, good to have a hard copy book. Good to own the DVD. Good to own the audio CD book. I'm not that big a fan of these e-books or these, audio books because I think they can delete them. They can change them pretty easily. And anyways, next quote from Archibald MacLeish. Once you permit those who are convinced of their own superior righteousness to censor and silence and suppress those who hold contrary opinions, just at that moment, the citadel has been surrendered. And America has kind of gone that way the last, 15, 20 years with all this PC. What PC means. It means promote communism. Okay, it's BS. Okay, Archibald MacLeish. What is freedom? Freedom is the right to choose. The right to create for yourself the alternatives of choice. Without the possibility of choice and the exercise of choice, a man is not a man, but just a member, an instrument, a thing. Okay? The college no longer exists to produce men qua men prepared for a life in a society of men, but rather specialized experts, men prepared for employment in an industry or a profession. But the educated man, the man capable not of providing specialized answers, but of asking the great and liberating questions by which humanity makes its way through time, is not more frequently encountered than he was 200 years ago. Okay, so what they're basically saying is, education has become like preparing people for a trade and not enough liberal arts education. Liberal arts, like in the times of Rome in the Middle Ages, meant, education for a free man. So he's able to think. He knows the classic. He knows how to work down to the truth. He knows right from wrong. He's a sophisticated thinking individual. Education doesn't prepare you for that at all. Okay, the next guy is, actually one last quote by Archibald MacLeish. He said, the dissenter is every human being at those moments of his life where he resigns momentarily from the herd and thinks for himself. Okay. All right, next guy is David MacMichael. Okay, so he's got a really good quote here. He says, power consists of being able to require others to accept your reality, being able to force people to do what you want them to do. The politically strong totally reject what you have to say if it conflicts with their official view of reality. The essence of power for these people is that they control the vision of reality. When you put forward an alternative, they get very angry because you are trying to break their monopoly. So yeah, that's how it is. And, again, Nietzsche had said this, that, power, the truth is often in some settings, some contexts, some locations. It's just a question of what the powerful people want. It's like that old saying, golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And another quote is about money. Money is the power to get other people to do something. So people with a lot of money have a lot more ability to get other people to do stuff. So you get a billionaire, he can get a lot of people to do whatever he says and generate, manufacture consent for something that's not true. And also keep having it said over and over again on midstream media outlets, and like Goebbels had said in Germany in the 1930s, you just repeat something often enough and most people think it's true. They don't really think very much. Orson Scott Card, the Mormon writer, he said, the mouse knows he's right, but the cat eats him anyways. That sounds like a lot more autobiographical for me than I wish it was. Okay, so now here is a Scottish poet, Hugh MacDiarmid, from 1892 to 1978. He lived. Here's his best quote. Our principal writers have nearly all been fortunate in escaping regular education. So the paradox of public school education is that it makes you dumber. And if you just have a person on their own, they'll encounter all kinds of unique experiences which will develop their mind more than they would going to the public school. So yes, you heard me correctly. I do not think children should go to public schools. I think it damages their intellect and their thinking ability. And you say, well, they learn so much. No, they don't. And whenever I ask somebody, what do you learn in high school and in grade school, junior high, they almost always tell me, I can't remember anything. I remember driver's ed. I learned how to drive. I maybe had one teacher or two that I liked. I remember how to type. I learned typing because that's a physical skill you do and you continue to do it. Driving something, a physical skill, you continue to do it. But other than that, next to nothing. Nothing, zero. And they don't like to read after they've been through that. Anyways, our next person's another writer, a novelist from America named Bernard Malamud. His novel, The Natural, became a popular movie about baseball starring Robert Redford. I remember seeing that movie many years ago. I liked it. But the main reason I got him in here, why do I think he's worth including? There was one great line in that movie I'll never forget the rest of my life. He said, "We have two lives, the one we learn with and the one we live with." And it's like, yep. So your young life, it's all fun and exciting, but you make some mistakes and you don't get to do them over again. Then you have to become an adult and just deal with life. It's like your Splendor in the Grass sweetheart from high school, she's gone. And then, your athletic career, you get an injury and that's gone. And you just have to move on. That's how it is. So learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. Okay, Bernard Malamud quotes continue. "Without heroes, we are all plain people, and we don't know how far we can go." Yeah, that's another thing, too, about teaching history. You should teach history based on events in the lives of great people, especially great men, because people need to know about their great ancestors, the heroes of the past, because that motivates you to what you could do. There were a lot of people that I met during my life that were kind of heroic, and they inspired me to try harder and to try to do more. Being around Mark and Dave Schultz made me see what it was like to be magnificent and great. And I'm like, gosh, it got me a lot better at wrestling, and it gave me a plan. I adopted their personalities and their approach into how to become good at school and later at learning in general. Okay, Malamud continues, "I would write a book or a short story at least 3 times. Once to understand it, a second time to improve the prose, and the third time to compel it to say what it must say." The first time you write the rough draft. You just got to get it down on paper. You make a mind map, try to make sure you include everything you should include, and then you go over it again to make sure it flows better. And then the third time, if you do go over it a third time, is to make sure you're making the key points you want to make. And it depends what you're writing. If you're writing a novel, of course, making the prose flow is the key focus. But if you're writing a science technical book, for me, the main thing I like to do is try to make sure my drawings, my illustrations are in a good, coherent, logical order, and with enough text to explain them. All right, teach yourself to work in uncertainty. Yeah, because you don't get certainty most of the time. Most of the time, you're always under time pressure. You've always got ongoing simultaneous problems. There's never a perfect time to do stuff. Like, this year I've written 8 books so far, and I always just had to say, look, I got 5 days off this month. I'm gonna crank them out on all my days off. And so I would spend my whole day off writing. And my whole family would say, "Why do you do that? You have no life." And I'm like, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to write the book. And if I didn't write the book, then I'll be mad at myself. And I don't want to be mad at myself. So I do it. I like writing the books. We're going to come to Norman Mailer next. And he says, "Writing a book is the closest a man ever comes to childbearing." Okay. Next quote by Bernard Malamud. He says, "A writer has to surprise himself to be worth reading." That's a good thing, is if you're writing and all of a sudden a joke pops into your mind or something funny or clever or whatever, and I usually just sit there for a moment and I ask myself, how do I feel about this? Because I'm like, should I really include this? This might be too vulgar or too rude or something like that. And then I get this feeling, does it make me laugh? Will my friends laugh at this? If I think it makes me laugh and my friends will laugh, I'm almost always going to include it. It would have to be really bad for me to not include it if I get that feeling. That's what I go by. That's how I judge, should I include it or not? How would my friends react to me in a conversation if I said that? Okay, next person, Norman Mailer. He lived 1923 to 2007, an American novelist. He was married 6 times, had 9 children. He was divorced 5 times. And this is his comments on marriage. "There are 4 stages to marriage." By the way, I've known a lot of guys with bad divorces. I had a divorce and mine was bad, but it wasn't as bad, anywhere near as bad as most guys' divorces. And I had a very, very, very close friend. He got divorced 3 times. On the 3rd divorce, he said, fuck this, and he committed suicide. Okay, divorce really fucks over men. And everybody, because it's men, nobody cares about men. It's completely unfair. So some guy's living in a house, paying all the bills. His wife cheats, makes a whore out of herself, commits adultery. And then she gets to keep the house. She gets to keep the kids. She gets to have a new man live in the house. And the guy who paid for the house has to continue to pay for the house. Why should that be fair? Why should she continue to get what she's become used to? Why should she? He's not getting what he's used to. Why should she get it when she caused all the trouble? 80% of divorces are filed by women. And I believe the reason for the whole process being the way it is a deliberate attempt to feminize the country and destroy the place, okay? To make it a gynocracy instead of a noble masculinity-run place. And that's to the detriment of anyone. Because even though a couple, women laughed all the way to the bank with their divorces, the net outcome currently, as I see it, is most of these young guys don't want to get married. And there's going to be tons and tons of unmarried young women. And, they try to pretend they're like men, but they're not. A woman's sort of made, to have kids, take care of kids, and run a family. Men are much more capable of working 7 days a week than they are, and of being happy. We don't really care that much about all the social stuff. Whenever there's a party, it's always the women are all over everything. Women love all this social stuff. Women love talking to children. That's like built into them. And so when they lose that from their life and don't have any kids and they become, just with their cats or something, they're not happy. Okay, they might tell you, I never wanted to have kids, I never wanted a husband. Bullshit. They're sad, they're lonely. And I see more and more of them ending up that way. And I see them all on, back in the time when I went on the dating apps, it was like endless, fat women with tattoos and facial piercings and all this other disgusting stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, no guy would want these women. I mean, I got really high standards. I'm kind of lucky, but no guy would want these women. I can't see any guy wanting these women. So anyways, Norman Mailer's a little bitter after having been divorced 5 times. And he said, I don't hate women, but I think they should be kept in cages. Anyways, he said the 4 stages of marriage. First, there's the affair. Then there's the marriage. Then there's children. And finally, the 4th stage, without which you cannot really know a woman, the divorce. Okay. Oh, then he says another thing, too. He says, whenever I write a book, it's for the money. And I'm laughing because, I don't really think he's that good of a writer. He just has a few entertaining quotes. And, he's a little bit of a spunky type of guy that gives him a couple good quotes. And but he says, anybody who's writing for the money, they're going to do mediocre work. That's not where great achievement comes from. Okay, here's a Norman Mailer quote. He says, I think it's bad to talk about one's present work, for it spoils something at the root of the creative act. It discharges the tension. Yeah, for a writer, you've got this concept in your mind you're trying to bring to fruition on paper, and you're not exactly sure if you can make it work or if you can make it as good as you want to make it or if you can get it done by the deadline. There's all these little questions in your mind that you're trying to prove yourself that you could do it. And if you talk to somebody all about the book you're writing, then what happens is you feel as if you've already done it, and there's this big drop in your motivation. Because part of wanting to write a book is like wanting to surprise the world in a sense. Even though in reality almost no one cares, you're still trying to prove you could do it. And so you want to have a little bit of that pent-up tension. I can do it. I can do it. Like I'll talk to myself when I'm trying to get myself psyched up because you do need a lot of energy to sit down and work on a book 12 hours in a day. It's easy the first 4 hours. That's fun. But, after 6, 7, 8, it's hard to keep going. And sometimes you really have to. Okay, here's another good Norman Mailer quote. There's no greater impotence in all the world than knowing you are right and the wave of the world is wrong, yet the wave crashes upon you. Yeah, and that's like that quote I gave a moment ago, Orson Scott Card. He said, the mouse knows he's right, but the cat eats him anyway. Yeah, power is more important than correctness in terms of who gets to have their way. In the movies, it's always, good wins in the end. In real life, evil wins more often than good does, unfortunately. Okay, Norman Mailer continues. He says, reaching a consensus in a group is often confused with finding the right answer. And that reminds me of another quote. I forget who said it, anonymous. Let's just say something like, a group consensus means that you've gotten a bunch of people to say in public to agree in public on something which they disagree about in private. Okay, Norman Mailer continues, the mark of mediocrity is to look for a precedent. Every moment of one's existence, one is growing into more or retreating into less. One is always living a little bit more or dying a little bit. I actually think that's true because, everybody knows what it's like to have a tedious job where you're just doing stuff because you got to make money. And you know that if you don't learn something during the daytime, if you don't do something good, improve something, you never stay the same. You're always either getting a little worse or getting a little better. So you want to do stuff to try to get a little better, or at least feel like you did something good, or to make yourself happy. So like if I'll have, let's say I have a doctor come to me and they'll have a question for me. Even though I really don't have to help them and I might be behind and I want to go home, I'll always help them because I want to help them, and also because I like to teach. So I'll teach them and answer their questions, even if I don't have to. So what I'm saying is part of being nice is to be nice for the sake of the other person, but part of being nice is for the sake of yourself. Because you feel better if you did some good deeds for the day that you didn't have to. Because as a regular doctor, in conventional medicine, doctors tend to be like, assembly line workers, trying to get the widgets going as fast as possible. When you actually go out of your way to help people in ways that you don't have to, you feel good about yourself. And then the other thing to do is, if I encounter a difficult case, I will try to look it up. The reason I'll do that is I want to learn, I want to remember, and it makes the day more fun. If I learn something new about something I didn't know before, that's more fun. Then I made some progress rather than just busy work. Okay, Norman Mailer continues. Writing books is the closest men come to childbearing. Being a real writer means being able to do work on a bad day. To me, being a real writer means being able to write even when you don't want to. Like you say to yourself, I must finish this book, within 2 days, so I'm going to have to put in 12, 13, 14-hour days to get this done. That's being serious about it. And like I said, Norman Mailer says, I always start a book for money. If you've been divorced 5 times, you have to. He said, writers don't have lifestyles. They just sit in little rooms and write. And that's something a little bit funny. That as a writer, you spend a lot of time reading and you spend a lot of time sitting at your desk cranking out a book. And I enjoy doing that, but it is true. And my family will look at me and say, why are you so happy sitting in your chair writing a book? I would not want to do that. Yeah, but it's more fun because I know I'm doing something good. I know my books are the state of the art, and whatever I write, whatever I do is the best thing, or I wouldn't do it, or is at least unique. There's sometimes a great book in the field already, but in a way I don't like. So I'll do mine my way, and a lot of times I'll do something that the other book didn't do. Have been some great books in nutrition, but my book will be unique because it involves more pathophysiology, more drawings, okay? So I wouldn't do the book unless I felt there was something unique about it that it had to offer, because otherwise, why put so much work into it? Okay, Norman Mailer's next quote about writing. He says, I think it can be dangerous for young writers to be modest when they're young. I've known a number of truly talented writers who did less than they could have done because they weren't vain and unpleasant about their talent. You have to take it seriously. Yeah, people say that to me sometimes. I've had a couple people tell me, my real friends, they're telling me, Pete, you should not say you are the best doctor because that makes people not like you. And for example, on my phone, I had the voice message is that, the world's greatest doctor is too busy to talk to you. So just leave a message and maybe he'll call you back. And, I'm just kidding around, but I also know I have to get myself psyched up or I couldn't do all the things that I do. And I also know that no matter what you do, you're always going to get a nasty response from conventional medicine. You're always going to get a nasty response from the midstream media legacy. The whole internet is controlled, to some extent by this side, this hand, that is the LEFT. So, to somebody who's promoting traditional values, they're never going to cut you any slack, okay? Like I said, that lady, what's her name? Dr. Day, one of the top 5 smartest women who ever lived, okay? An absolute magnificent genius. She was ostracized and blocked over and over and over again. You could barely find her on the internet. And she's one of the smartest women who ever lived, and just recently. So that's why all this feminism is a bunch of crap. They're not trying to help women. They're trying to turn women into a bunch of chumps to make them hateful to men. And when a real female genius comes along, what does everybody do about them? Everybody else says when a real female genius comes along, she's a bitch, I hate her, she's a bitch, okay? So look at the great female geniuses of the last 50 years. Ayn Rand. Most common thing you hear about her, I hate her, she's a bitch, she's selfish, etc. Ann Coulter, oh, I hate her, she's a bitch. And what do they say about this lady, Dr. Day? I hate her, she's a bitch, okay? That's what they always say. What did they say when Amy Chua wrote Tiger Mom? I hate her, she's a bitch. Anytime a woman does something great, she gets all these women that hate her, and a lot of men too, and say that they're bitches. Okay, it's true. Okay, Norman Mailer. The highest prize in the world of men is the most beautiful woman available on your arm and living there in her heart, loyal to you. Okay. All right, so we got one more quote person for today. Let me scroll up a little bit. This is Maimonides, or Rambam, Moses ben Maimon. He was a philosopher from Spain. He said, when I find the road narrow and can see no other way of teaching a well-established truth except by pleasing one intelligent man and displeasing 10,000 fools, I prefer to address myself to the one man. He continues, one should accept the truth from wherever it comes. Yeah, some people won't accept the truth if it doesn't come from somebody they like or from their own institution. He says, the spiritual perfection of man consists in his becoming an intelligent being, one who knows all that he is capable of learning. Any disease that can be successfully treated by diet should be treated by diet and not by any other means. All right, that's the quotes for today. I hope you found that helpful.